So once you've created your verticals, one of the next stages is to generate cross-section outputs. And what this will allow you to do is to sample perpendicular to that alignment, cross-section information spanning multiple surfaces. And you can certainly show cut and fill between those surfaces and represent the core geometry changes of those surfaces. And all of that happens through cross-section sheets. Now, in terms of the spacings for where cross-sections can occur, that comes from adding more sampling and when you create the verticals. Just one thing, sometimes you may need to edit the widths of your cross-sections. So when you present your cross-sections, the actual width of the sections that you can show is actually managed from here, set section widths. So it's in here that you really want to set up the widths that you want to have. I think positive is the way to go here. So to generate your cross sections, click on cross section sheets, click on your alignment, and just reiterating, the selected sections list that we used before is managed from here. And you tick on what cross sections you want to generate. You'll see there tick box for cross sections, so we're going to use the selected sampled sections list, which will give us those cross sections that we want. So you see here a default view for the cross sections, starting at the top of the tree here at the overall settings, and they're setting up the title block in the basic settings. They're setting up the scales of the cross sections. They're setting up the clearance, row clearance between cross sections, and also the column spacing, so the spacing between the columns. You can have fixed row spacing. You'll see that the bottoms of those don't line up. If you do that, just make sure you give yourself enough row clearance so that you can show both design and existing, so all the surfaces. Datum specification is really about reserving a minimum distance and determining the RLs, and then the datum drawing is about representing a bit of text for the RLs. You'll see in the widths and text here that you are able to play around with the sampling width. I'd like to show 15 meters left and right instead of the default 10 there. Once I click OK to this, I can see that I'm now reorganized my sheets. Now on a cross section by cross section basis, I've got these bands and this line work. Extra settings actually lets you vary your section widths based on alignments. You can choose to have your heading shown on every cross section, and you can choose your own layout naming convention when you generate your layout sheets. If I go into the heading widths and I tick on show heading on all sections, then instead of only showing it on one, I'm showing it on multiple sheets. Because they overlap, I'll get in and I'll just make the column width a little bit bigger, and that will give me the gap that I need. Now the software is showing that it's going to generate 2 sheets. Now at the moment I'm showing 3 bands, so if I focus on the band section, the band section is actually what's generating A, the line work, and B, this heading information on the left and the rows. So you'll see there's an offset band, an existing surface band, and a design surface. Now we're not really designing a surface, we're showing surfaces that have been created by the surface manager. So we're going to scrap the design and we're going to add a new band. So you see under here for bands, you can add preset bands, other bands, and annotation objects. We're going to add a surface band. Okay, so in all cases when you've got multiple surfaces, you'll use the surface band. Layers tagged objects will let you use line work in the drawing to label on your cross sections, and height difference will be cut and fill, which we'll get to in a moment. When we click on surfaces, we're able to add a band. We go and pick the surface that we'd like to represent, and we're going to draw a band of elevations, and we're also going to draw the section line, and you get to pick what layer that goes on. So we're going to put that on road centerline layer, and under band controls you choose the title of your band. So I'm going to call this mound surface. You've got text, text height, and then you've got the text that you want to display in the band. You can use label styles, but we won't take that approach in this case. Under offset controls, one thing to know is that by default you're going to represent every single grade break of that mound surface, so there'll be lots of cross sections. We are going to create that way, and then we're going to come back and apply some filtering to filter out some cross sections. You can also show cross falls for your surface, but once we click OK, what you'll see is that where that surface exists, then we're building up the details of that mound. Okay, so this is crossing the sections, and we're picking up every single grade break for that mound. If you want to filter your grade breaks, in here in the band under offset controls, you can apply a grade break limit for your filter, a height difference for your filtering, a minimum offset, or a chord height difference. The chord height difference looks from one point to the next and to the next and draws a straight line, and if the height offset is bigger than this value, then it adds the sampling in, otherwise it scraps. It's a very powerful and useful way for you to limit filtering that doesn't really add value in terms of grade breaks. Once we apply this, what you'll see is that some of those grade breaks got taken out. So the software is really trying to isolate and focus on the ones that are important grade breaks in that surface. You can add as many surfaces as you like by using the surface tool here. Let's quickly add a height difference, which is probably a common thing you'll add. So when you add a height difference band, you need to configure it, and you need to tell it which surfaces you're comparing. So we're going to compare the mound surface to the existing. We'll do the height difference in meters, and we'll click OK. So that configures the two surfaces. Do you want to draw a band? The section line drawing is somewhat irrelevant because it's a height difference. We're going to call this one cut/fill. You can set your own band height or 0 for the defaults. Adopt the text sizes that you want. Offset controls aren't really required. This band will take the offsets from the two surfaces. Once you click OK, you'll now see that you get another band, and that band shows cut and fill. So you may need to play around a little bit with your spacings to make sure everything fits well on sheets. Okay, so when you're happy with your presentation, one very important thing is to save the style. So when you save the style, you can then reuse that presentation output. We won't cover the annotations. However, the annotations do talk about adding symbols, do talk about using layers for generating offset information. I would be using the modern day approach for using layers for offsets, but the annotations are there as well. You can either plot to file, which will create external files of each sheet, or you can plot to layout. You can also use the chainage picker up the top here to choose which cross-section extents you'd like to plot for. So you can actually not show certain cross-sections by limiting the extents of your cross-section plots. Plot to file will create external files, and plot to layout will actually create layout tabs in the drawing. Whenever you come back and edit, so if you draw line work on here and you rerun plot to layout, it doesn't delete your line work, it will just update the sections. You'll see here that I didn't tick the box plot start end, so I'm plotting all the cross sections. If I rerun plot to layout now, I'm only plotting those cross section extents I wanted. And that's really a summary of cross section plotting.